Facilities that make this program possible are provided by the City of Highland Park. Programs are produced independently by members of the community. The City of Highland Park is not affiliated with the following program or the producers of public access programming and is not responsible for the content. The following program does not reflect the opinions of the City of Highland Park.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Jennifer Dotson, and I'm the founder and director of Highland Park Poetry, as well as your host for Poetry Today. Today, we are talking about the 2018 Poetry Challenge. Every year, Highland Park Poetry issues a challenge, and we usually have 3 different challenges. This year, the challenges were to write about electricity, since it is the 75th anniversary of the death of Nikola Tesla, as well as the next challenge was to write about monsters, since it's the 200th anniversary of the publication of Mary Wollstonecraft Shelley's Frankenstein. And the last challenge was a form poem called The Golden Shovel, which was created by contemporary poet Terence B. Hayes as a way of honoring the memory of former Illinois poet laureate Gwendolyn Brooks. And it was inspired by her poem, We Real Cool. So it's an interesting form. It asks that you take either an entire poem or a line from a poem and make that the right-hand margin of your page, and then you're filling it in almost. So it's an interesting, although slightly visual poetry challenge. But I have 2 guests with me today I'm really pleased with. They are both, their poems were selected. So Highland Park Poetry received over 250 poem submissions from poets around the world, as well as students of all ages. And so we were fortunate to have 2 poets with us today. My first guest is Oliver Mansfield. He is a writer, specifically a creative writer who likes to write on the spur of the moment when his inspiration and emotions are at their highest. Poetry is a great release for him. Oliver is 17 years old and attends Deerfield High School. Thanks for joining us, Oliver.
Yes, thank you for inviting me.
Oh, great.
Still in mild disbelief that it's happening, but
it's happening. It's real. You're here right now.
Yeah.
So, first of all, I just wanted to find out, how did you find out about the Poetry Challenge?
It's sort of a funny story because I didn't know that the Poetry Challenge was happening until it was part of my creative writing class at school.
Wonderful.
And this poem was not actually written for it. On the last day of creative writing, our teacher showed us a bunch of contests and was like, here are a bunch of contests that you can potentially submit things to. So I decided to submit Ode to Halloween to the Highland Park Poetry Challenge because I was like, hey, monsters, I guess that fits. And then I got 3rd place, so I guess that happened.
Wow, fabulous. Well, you know what?
A little bit crazy.
That's a great intro to your poem. Maybe you could read it to us now.
Oh, boy, sure. Halloween, what a scare. I love horror. I adore the dark. But most of all, I love the fun. Whether it's me or a 6-year-old kid, or the baby in the stroller, or the tired chaperone. Oh, I love your costumes. If you scare me with leather splattered red or dark faces reflected in pale moonlight, you've more than earned your treat. Bring me tales of shambling ghouls or screaming banshees. Or perhaps cute princesses and cool heroes are more your style. Oh, what a joy. Frankenstein's monster and Count Dracula have found their way to my doorstep. I'm coming, yes. But first, I must ask you, my dear reader, trick or treat?
Excellent, thank you. Yes, and I guess when I associate Halloween, my favorite is the candy that I get to put out. I usually buy my favorite candy, and then which is peanut butter, the Reese's peanut butter cups, and I provide something else usually. But anyway, I do love seeing what all the people are dressed up as.
Our house gives out full-size candy bars, so we're like the cool house on the street.
Oh, you are the Halloween people.
Oh, yes. And,
Yeah.
and maybe,
Halloween is my favorite holiday.
I don't know
by
if you want to
far.
share your address or not, because then you
I have
might.
no-
no.
That's a bad
Okay.
idea.
All right, bad idea.
Please do not come to my house and choose your candy.
Okay.
We do not have candy.
My next guest is also Connie Vitale. She is a psychotherapist in private practice and was a member of Loyola University's adjunct faculty for 25 years, teaching in the Institute of Pastoral Studies. Her undergraduate degree was in English literature. Her father was an English professor at DePaul University and is in a large part responsible for her love of the rhythmic play of words. In her spare time, she takes long bike rides and studies Tai Chi, Argentine tango, and is learning to play the harp. Over the years, Connie has occasionally written poetry, but this is her first experience of entering a poetry challenge or contest. And her goal is to learn how to write poetry when she's happy and filled with joy, not only when she is feeling challenged by life. Well, Connie, I do identify with those moments when you're feeling challenged as a source of inspiration
Yes.
to writing.
Mhm.
But I'll bet we could find some ways to inspire you to
I'm
write
hoping
poems
so.
when you're happy.
When I'm happy, it just comes out as kind of sentimental. Doesn't really move me. You know, I
Yeah.
think I want to do other things when I'm really happy, other than
Oh, I
sit
see.
and write, but
Right. Well,
that is
yeah,
a
you've got a
goal.
lot of things to choose from with
Yes.
Argentine tango and
Yes.
harp and Tai
Yes.
Chi and all
Yes.
that. So,
Yes.
but thank you so much for submitting your poem, and it's fabulous. For me, it evoked Anne Sexton. Is it Anne Sexton who wrote was it Transformations, which evoked fairy tales?
I don't know.
I,
I'll have to look into
yes,
that though.
do check it out, because I was very intrigued with her use of fairy tales, and yours sort of evoked that sort of fairy tale
Yes.
quality and history
Yes.
of, and so anyway, I don't know. Do you want to start by reading
Sure,
your
that's-
poem? That'd be
This
great.
also was not a poem that was written for the poetry challenge. I tried the golden shovel.
Oh, yes.
I spent a couple weeks on the golden shovel, and then rather than just give up completely, I pulled this out.
Wonderful.
But it was written a few years ago. So it's called Dreamless. Dreamy little girl, daddy's pride, mother's pearl. Pearl of great price, too great perhaps. Snow white, rose red, Beauty and the Beast. If we knew our destinations, would we dare the dream to waken? Would we enter into gardens? Would we let the seeds be sown? Would we let our hearts be taken, or lock tight the cloister's gate, heart within the woodman's box? No is learned much too late. No power once the fates have pulled back the veils through which we have not seen, in truth a fairy tale world. We wait on princes and babies with hair as black as coal and skin as white as snow and lips ruby red, and forget poisoned apples and trolls. We see the glimmer of gold in the big black bear's torn fur and bid the beasts every deed to protect the illusions of the king and queen whose safety we suffer to secure. If we knew our destination, would we dare our dreams to waken and pull back the veils before we enter and start down the garden paths from which dreamy young girls do not return?
Wow. Well, I completely understand why the judges picked that one.
Oh,
So
thank
it's
you.
good.
Thank you. I have to say I was stunned. I have carried this 3 different times to open mics and have never had the courage, never thought it was good enough to read, never had the courage to read
wow.
it. So this has been a huge experience. I'm just so grateful for
Wow.
it. Although I've dug in my heels at every step.
Well, thank you for being brave enough to share the poem, and I'm glad you tried the golden shovel. Don't give up on it. It is kind of an interesting form to play with, and since I mentioned it, I might as well. I submitted a golden shovel, and the poem that I used as my source poem is from an Emily Dickinson poem called, well, it's known as number 1540, and the line is, "As imperceptibly as grief in the summer lapsed away." And so you'll hear those words when I read the poem that I wrote. And my poem is called Empty Nest. We looked forward to becoming empty nesters as one by one the children left home. Imperceptibly, we're surprised at the sudden silences as we find ourselves alone together. My unexpected grief at adding entries with their new addresses in the book, because before, our home was their home. Summer ended, dropping them off at their respective universities. Time lapsed differently. We yearn to hold them now that they're away. So. You do hear the words that I mentioned in the source material, and so it's an interesting exercise to try and fill in. And the poem that you end up with, that you've written, doesn't have to necessarily have a relationship or directly respond to the themes of the source poem.
But it sets a tone.
It does. It does set a tone.
Yes.
It does set a tone. And
Definitely.
so really selecting just the right line of poetry or just the right, because those are the words you're going to be working with is real important. So if you find a poem that you really love, I encourage you to keep trying with that. I'm going to ask you, so now, are you a junior or a senior at Deerfield High School?
I am a senior, which means I'm almost done with high school.
Happy day.
It's scary. It's scary.
You mentioned that you're also very involved with sort of tech. You're doing have been to a camp for sort of tech computer stuff. What direction are you looking for after high school?
Definitely not a tech direction, funnily
Oh, really?
enough.
Oh, okay. Where do you see yourself
I'm
going?
going to go to the University of Denver to study psychology and English. So specifically, hopefully, creative writing.
Terrific.
So
that's great.
Hopefully that goes well and will be very interesting and enlightening and fun.
So now you write, when you say that you do creative writing, so what types of things do you like to write in addition to the poetry?
Most of the time when I write poetry, it's when like something random pops into my head and I'm like, oh, I should put that down, and then it ends up as a poem. So
okay.
But most of what the other things I write is, actually most of what I write is online role play, which is, I've set up a group basically with my friends where we essentially take turns writing paragraphs in like an instant messaging system, and we write a story together.
Wow.
And so it's a really fun collaborative writing experience. We each play our own characters, and generally it's just really fun to see what happens, see the characters develop, see things come and go. We have a lot of inside jokes.
Now, is that kind of related to sort of, because, a long, long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, I used to play Dungeons and Dragons when I was in college. Is that sort of similar to that? Except using it as a literary platform?
Imagine it as Dungeons and Dragons without the dice.
Okay.
It's purely the aspect of you are playing a character and you are writing, as opposed to you are playing physically as the character.
Okay. Well, one thing I might encourage you to experiment with, if you're looking to sort of maybe merge some sort of character work and your poetry, would be to write like a persona poem, where you're adopting, it's like almost like writing a monologue that a character, except it's a poem. So that might be something.
That could definitely be very fun.
Might be fun. But well, best of success to you in Denver. That sounds very exciting.
It is exciting.
And Connie, I was going to ask you. So you studied English literature.
I did.
And then and you also mentioned that your father was a professor of literature.
He was.
Were there favorite poets or poems that you grew up with, or that you studied that really inspired you?
I was worried that you would ask
me
this question. No,
it's not a trick question.
No, it isn't. It's my first college course. Almost by mistake, I ended up in my father's class.
Oh, wow.
The summer before I started school, I went down with him to get a couple courses out of the way, and the beginning English class that I was going to take was closed, and the only one that was open during the time he was there was his course, which was a 300 level 19th century poetry and prose.
Oh, jeez.
It was the best, really.
Wow.
It was a terrifying experience. It was the best course I've ever
Oh, wow.
had. I
Wonderful.
grew in such appreciation of him and learned about iambic pentameter and have always loved Byron and Shelley and Keats
Okay.
and Wordsworth,
Yeah.
so. But I didn't ever write anything during that time. I have one poem that I wrote when I was 16.
Ah. Did you bring that with you?
I actually did, but it's very tiny. And
That's
it's,
okay. That's all right. We have no prejudices
About
the
tiny.
tiny poems.
And it's very, I am not this young man writing at this age. I was very young writing. But I'll read it. So it is called Rose-Colored Bubbles. I live in a rose-colored bubble, floating through life, glimpsing suffering, pain, and death, but not touched, for I live in a rose-colored bubble.
Mm.
And what I find so fascinating, years later I wrote splat
Oh
across the bubble, because life had changed, and it's so interesting how that was about kind of feeling like I really was floating above life in some ways.
Protected and
Protected, nothing, just really this very ideal life out in Barrington with horses, and but that anything I've written since then, almost everything has come out of loss or pain. It's been very different, and I've been so grateful for the poetry for that,
yeah.
really for that. So it is an interesting contrast, though,
Yeah,
for me.
right. That's neat. There's short poems sometimes capture a real essential moment or truth or.
It was the strongest feeling about my life at
that
point.
time.
Yes,
Yeah.
that it was
Interesting.
so good, and that it was very protected and privileged.
Mhm.
So
Neat. That's good.
and
to know.
sad about it in some ways, right? No,
Yeah.
realizing that wasn't the state of the world. So,
Right.
So yes,
Yeah.
it did capture a deep truth for me.
Well, and oftentimes we find ourselves just well, I suppose it's great that if your sort of sense of concern, your circle of concern is greater than your circle of
Personal experience.
Personal experience, yes.
Yes.
So that you feel for other people who are suffering in the world, and sadly that there are a lot. There are a lot. What else inspires you when you're writing poetry specifically? I know you brought I asked if you would bring a one or two other poems. Did you?
Yeah, I brought 2 other poems because
Okay.
I basically just went into the good poems section of my poetry portfolio for creative writing and bought them. So,
Oh, good. Okay.
I know I personally did the classic teenager move of struggling a lot with identity issues. So I wrote some interesting poems about that. And this one is actually, it's called What It's Like to Question. And it's something that I wrote for creative writing, and it is, I think, to date, one of the best things I've actually written.
Okay.
Do you mind if I read it?
I would love for you to read it.
Oh boy. What it's like to question. I'm not sure. I never have been. Am I Oliver or am I Minerva? Sat on my back, my head and my arms. I've never known. My body, is that right? No, I have to change it. But how? Is my body the right shape? Do I move and remove and add parts here and there? Is my hair long enough? Is it too short? Should I dye something? My eyes and face, are they the right color? What if I'm not human? What if am I meant to be? Or was I supposed to be a wolf, a sphinx, or a spider? What's that on my back? Is that there, or am I imagining it again? My legs. Is it just me, or do I seem shorter? Everything's so big and tall now. Am I imagining it? Or is there some real change, some rectification or fix? There it is again. That person. Are they real? I lost my place. What are they thinking? Am I a person or another step towards their success? Are they even real? Do they think? What is the world? Am I the only one who sees? Is this some sick construct made to contain me? Am I supposed to be contained? Am I me, or am I just another character, a puppet in the book or game of life? Who is me? What's that mean? Who gets to decide who is me and who is not? Does anyone have that choice? I am unsure. I always have been, and I always will be. So, with 7 words in my arsenal, I will question everything. But first, the most important question to answer is, who am I?
Oh, very true. Very true. We all have to answer that for ourselves.
Yes.
And oftentimes you feel like, oh, I'm in a movie, but am I like just the extra, or am I the star of my own movie?
That's absolutely the question.
Yes.
I personally hold a belief that like everyone is the main character of their own story. So like, just imagine it like that. It's nice.
Have you ever read Tom Stoppard's? Oh no, I'm blanking on it. It was his version of, Rosencrantz and Guildenstern. That was what I was
Absolutely not. I do not.
Check it
read
out.
a
I
lot.
think you would. I think you should add that to your list.
Remind me after this, and I'll make a
Okay.
note of it.
All right.
And we'll see if I remember the note, because I forget a lot of things.
Okay. All right. Did you bring another poem as well?
I did.
Okay, great.
I did. Okay. Okay, I will read this. It's Question Pondered.
Another one with questions.
More
see?
questions.
And how synchronous for
Questions,
us to.
questions, questions.
Yes, I wasn't sure what I was going to read, but after you read that, I will read this. Question Pondered. In sooth, I know not why I am so sad. Merchant of Venice, Shakespeare. Sad, a word our world seems to know not. Not depression, deadened disconnection, darkened eyes and black and white vision, drug-defying disbelief and fragile bonds that tie us to our destiny. But sad, life flowing, overflowing with feeling that redeems this mother of sorrows time. This thick, dark tapestry of memories woven in hues of indigo and violet, remembering a moment different. A moment of baby powder-scented comfort, vibrant with eyes reflecting morning sky and silky yellow curls, damp from 2-year-old's play, of presence made in primary colors, presented with innocent adoration. So soon he comes, the sometimes deep-voiced son, handsome in tuxedo and cummerbund, chosen to match the princess red gown. Awkward, as we pretend to not remember the toddler's declaration of devotion and sworn promises to wed. Moments of comfort slip between desperate attempts to distance those tender memories of time that materializes my heart's longing for that which is forever gone. So here doth lie all the beauty that the world can hold, that holds me in hues of indigo and violet, that holds me. In sooth, I know why.
Wow.
Depression kind of sucks, doesn't it? As someone who also has suffered from depression, depression sucks.
I make the difference. For me, there's a big difference between sadness and depression, and this felt very sad.
Yeah.
Sad.
That's
Yeah.
definitely sadness. Depression is straight up emptiness.
So it's the fullness. Yeah, it's the fullness of the feeling. So I love this poem. It touches me really deeply. It feels very true. But I would love to write something that touches me when I'm happy. So that's that's kind of where that wish came from.
Well, all of the poems that were selected by the judges for our 2018 Poetry Challenge are now on the website under the Muses Gallery, and available also in our chapbook, which is a collection of all of those poems and many of the images that are that are also featured on the website. The website will be the 2018 Poetry Challenge poems will be on the website through the mid-June, and then in June our summer theme for the gallery is going to be coffee, tea, and other beverages. So I encourage you to think about maybe what you might write about. So far, the coffee drinkers are sending in more submissions than anybody else, but I'm hoping to get some other beverages in there in particular.
My little brother said he wanted to write a poem about chocolate milk.
I think that would be great. I look forward to it. I hope he submits. That would be wonderful.
I'll tell him to.
And I hope you submit. I look forward to reading what you write.
Oh boy.
Sometimes actually when you have both a deadline, and the deadline for the coffee, tea, and other beverages is June 1st. And sometimes when you have a given theme, you know, it narrows the scope of the sort of big creative candy store that we all, you know, that can be intimidating. If you're like, oh, what do I write about? Or, oh, what do I, oh, it's too much. And sometimes it helps when you have just sort of a theme or an idea like chocolate milk to focus on. It makes it easier to at least attempt the task and come up with a draft.
And it can be just a reference point, can't it? I
Right.
mean, because the poem can be really about something different that includes that.
Yes.
Which is
that's
what
right.
I saw in reading the other poems
Yeah.
from the last challenge.
And I guess since we wrote all, you know, so far I did the Golden Shovel, and you shared both other poems as well as your selected poems for the Monsters Challenge. I thought I would just read, to give a full scope of the whole experience, the poem of Electricity. This was by Marjorie Rissman. She earned the first place for a Highland Park resident in electricity. It's a brief history of Nikola Tesla, extraordinary inventor, spoke 8 languages. His greatest ideas came to him from solitude, like a poet, a philosopher. He rode the waves from poverty to wealth, back to poverty. Tall and handsome, outstanding student, consummate host yet never married. Friends became enemies who stole inventions, who one day financed him, then pulled out the next. He knew remarkable success and dismal failure. Known as a mad scientist by many, as brilliant as his light bulbs. To others, his life as strangely alternating as his circuits, ending homeless, devoted to beloved pigeons in the park. So that was from Marjorie Rissman. I did ask her to be on the show, but she was not available. So she says, but thank you very much for joining me today. And do you have any suggestions for themes for next year's challenge? I'm always seeking ideas for how to challenge poets in 2019. I do know that 2019 will be the sesquicentennial for Highland Park. Highland Park's been around 150 years. It was first incorporated in March of 1869. But I don't know, how inspired poetically can we be about it? I don't know, maybe.
Actually, what I was thinking of, looking at your 2 guests, are stages of life. And
Oh,
there
okay.
are stages of life for Highland Park as well.
Oh,
aren't
that's
there?
true.
It's definitely true.
Yeah.
We were talking about the bubble, and all I could think of was the reason I wanted to go to Denver for college was because Deerfield has this Deerfield bubble that's like very different from like everywhere else. And University of Denver has a lot of opportunities to just get out there, go places, do stuff, because they have a huge focus on experience. So
Okay.
I'm hoping to basically pop the bubble and experience the world.
Yeah.
It's a
Wow.
stage of life.
Yes, that's right. That is
Exactly.
That is a stage of
And I
life.
talked about stage of life with my poem as Empty Nesters, you know, sort of
Yes.
talking about.
Stage of
Yes.
life would
Yeah, stage of
stages of
life.
life would definitely be a very good topic.
Wow, definitely something for us to consider for next year. And now to come up with a theme. I mean, a form poem that everybody would like to try. That's
Could always do like haiku. I don't know.
Yeah, I think, well, we've done some short forms before. We've done like Ethery, and we've done sonnets when it was Shakespeare's anniversary, like 400th anniversary. We did sonnets. Interestingly enough, I got no electricity poems from high school students, and very few, and no golden shovels, I thought. So anyway. Thank you so much for being my guest today and for talking about the 2018 Poetry Challenge. It was, I'm so glad that you participated.
Thanks a lot for inviting me.
Yes,
Sure.
It was lovely to be here.
No, it's
Very exciting.
Well, please.